welcome to the AT&T Countdown to Kickoff. We have made it to the final weekend of the MLS regular season. Atlanta United is almost certainly in the MLS Cup playoffs. They have a little bit more work to do Sunday in Cincinnati, and I mean a really tiny bit of work. In all reality, Atlanta United is going to be in the playoffs. So this is going to be a different kind of AT&T Countdown to Kickoff today because we're going into decision day. And while Atlanta United's in good shape to make the playoffs, where they could play in the postseason is still very much up for grabs. Where they finish on the Eastern Conference table is still very much uncertain and up for grabs. So rather than go through highlights and interviews and all that, we just want to break down these scenarios for you and get you ready for decision day and everything that could potentially impact Atlanta United. But before we do, really quick, congratulations to the Braves. It's been an awesome week in the city, and Atlanta United's going to try to follow the Braves down Peachtree Street a couple months from now. They've got to get to a position where they can do it. Getting the draw on Wednesday and New York Red Bulls, Jason, was a very, very good start to that.
Yeah, a huge start to that, and a tough place to play, a place that Atlanta United still has not scored a goal in. The Red Bulls play a brand of soccer that is about as opposite of what Atlanta United stands for in terms of philosophy, and it's a tough matchup. It was a tough match on Wednesday. We would show you highlights, but we don't really want to waste your time with that. There wasn't a lot. Atlanta United defended really well. They prevented the Red Bulls from doing what they do well, which is turning the ball over in a dangerous spot and creating an opportunity out of it. There was really one time that happened. There was one turnover in the middle third that presented a breakaway opportunity. Brad Guzan made a big save. We'll talk more about Brad here in just a bit. But the highlight of Wednesday is the result. And let's look at the results across the league from Wednesday. Atlanta's point in Red Bull Arena is big. Montreal beat Houston as expected. That ends Houston's season. Out west was where there were a few surprises. Vancouver going on the road at Bank of California Stadium, getting a really needed point for them and putting LAFC in a tough spot to qualify for the postseason. Portland winning at Salt Lake. RSL's in a little bit of a tough spot now. Portland getting the road win. Nobody saw Austin beating Kansas City in that match. Austin has had a tough year, their first year in the league. Kansas City had an opportunity to really lock up first place in the West and failed to do it. I would imagine that Peter Vermes is not a happy camper at the moment after that kind of a loss one game before decision day.
Yeah, because now it opens the door for Seattle and for Colorado in the Western Conference to get the number one seed. So let's look at the Eastern Conference table now. We're going to sort all of this out, and you don't need to take notes. There's not going to be a quiz on this or anything, but we're going to try to help you understand what's going to happen on decision day and how it affects Atlanta United. Now, the big thing on the table right now, look at Atlanta United's position, 5th. Look at their points, 48. Look at the teams below the playoff line right now. Montreal, 46. DC and Columbus, 44. So DC and Columbus cannot catch Atlanta United. Montreal could, but they play Orlando. Orlando and Atlanta United are in the same number of points right now. So if Montreal beats Orlando, Orlando would fall below Atlanta United.
Right.
Unless Atlanta United had a goal difference problem. We're going to show you in a moment why that is unlikely.
Yes.
Here is the schedule for decision day. Now, keep in mind what you've seen with the table, and here's why everything is so vital for really the Philadelphia-New York City match. That's going to determine maybe the 2 seed, the 3 seed, maybe the 4 seed. Orlando and Montreal, that is basically a play-in game right now. Nashville, Red Bulls. Red Bulls are going to have to get a result at Nashville in all likelihood to get in the postseason. They don't definitely need it, but they probably will because Columbus hosts Chicago. They'll be favored in that match. DC is at Toronto. Tricky match, but a match that DC could probably win. So let's try to break this all down as simply as we can. And again, there's not going to be a quiz or anything like that. New England's the number one seed, locked in. They're going for 76 points if they beat Miami, and that would be tremendous. As long as Nashville does what we expect them to do, and that's beat Red Bulls at home, then Nashville or Philadelphia, that would be the situation where you'd maybe have a 2 or a 3 seed because Philadelphia, in order to stay in the mix for the 2 seed, would have to win at Yankee Stadium. That's actually something that Atlanta United wants to have happen, though, because if Atlanta, in fact, let's show the scenario for Atlanta United getting in the playoffs here, and then we'll come back.
Let's
back
start
to us.
there. It's really simple, honestly, and here it is in black and white. Atlanta United officially clinches their playoff spot with a win, with a draw, or if they lose by less than 8 goals. That's not an exaggeration. That's not, playing jokes on anybody. That's what the scenario is. It's really that simple. I do not think there has been a match in Major League Soccer this season where anyone has lost by 8 goals.
No.
I don't think there was one. I don't know if there's one in the history of the league. Maybe there's one somewhere in there, somewhere. Something crazy happened. But that's the scenario. So Atlanta United is all but in.
They're in. They're unofficial. I mean, the league's not going to want us to say
I was saying
in,
it that way, yes.
They're in. So Atlanta United's playing for seed on Sunday. Let's just be completely realistic about that. Atlanta United's playing for seed. Now, the highest Atlanta United can finish is 4th. Let's go back to this Philadelphia-New York City match because that's going to go a long way to determining. If Atlanta United wins in Cincinnati on Sunday, if Philadelphia wins at New York City on Sunday, Atlanta United is going to be the 4 seed, and they're going to have a first-round home playoff match. Who would they play? Could be New York City. Could be Orlando if Orlando wins at Montreal. What happens, though, if Orlando loses at Montreal? Orlando could be out because you could potentially have Red Bulls getting a result or a win at Nashville. That would put them over Orlando if Orlando's stuck on 48 points. And then Montreal obviously would climb over Orlando. They would go to 49 if they beat Orlando. So that's where you could potentially see the movement in the Eastern Conference this weekend. It is possible that Nashville could fall if they should not beat Red Bulls, and if there is a winner, if Philadelphia wins, New York City would not catch. Actually, New York City could catch Nashville because they have more wins than Nashville, but that would require a Nashville loss. We're probably confusing you more than you need to be confused at the moment. The big thing for Atlanta United is this. If they win and if Philadelphia wins on Sunday, Atlanta United is going to have a home game in the first round. And that's the best they can accomplish on decision day. So, Jason, that needs to be the goal. But if Atlanta United should get a home playoff game, well, the Benz has been their fortress this year. I would like their chances.
Yeah, it's somewhat clear in the East. I think it might be a little more clear in the East than the bottom half of the West, where it's very complicated. And one of the reasons it's so clear is the top and the bottom has a little bit of definition in the East. Philadelphia and Nashville are going to host a playoff game. We know that. They're locked into no lower than 4th. New York City is not locked into a home playoff game yet, but if they get a draw or a win, they are. A draw would be enough for them against either Atlanta or Orlando, who could match 51 points because of the number of wins for New York City. That's the first tiebreaker. In a lot of leagues, the first tiebreaker is goal differential. In Major League Soccer, it's wins. And New York City has 14 of them. Even if they don't pick up a win on decision day, Atlanta could only get to 13 and 51 points, same as New York City with a draw. Same for Orlando. They only have 12 wins coming in. So New York City, a draw gets them a home playoff game. A win gets them a home playoff game. 2, 3, 4 can move around a little bit. Atlanta can get to 4. Orlando can get to 4 with a win and a New York City loss and an Atlanta draw or loss. So 4 is in play. 5, 6, 7 is definitely in play and could jumble around a lot. We know that DC and Columbus, if they get in, they can only get to 7. That's as far as they can get because of the situation. That would require a Red Bulls loss and a DC win or a Columbus win. it's a little hectic. Stranger things have happened. They might be able to pull it off. I don't think it's all that likely in all the scenarios. Montreal's the one to watch. And we said this before because of having that midweek game against an opponent that they should win. They did. They took care of business against the Houston Dynamo. And now Montreal is essentially in a play-in game with Orlando. Montreal has to win. Orlando needs something out of that game. Now, if there's a scenario where Montreal draws and New York Red Bulls lose, that still doesn't help Montreal because of the wins tiebreaker. So Montreal's in a must-win scenario at home at Stade Saputo, a place where they've done well. And Orlando's got to show they can get something there. So it's going to be fun to watch, and we're going to be talking about it on the radio broadcast and all the different results and where things stand. We'll give you live updates on the table. But Atlanta, their picture is pretty clear in what they can control. Win and fourth is in play. That's really what it comes down to. They have to hope for help, but a win could get them to fourth in a home playoff game. The matchups can vary. I mean, they could play, I think, realistically, depending on the table and where everything falls, I think Atlanta could play Philadelphia, Nashville, New York City, Orlando. I think there's a scenario where they could play the Red Bulls in a playoff game, potentially a scenario where they could play Montreal. So the opponent is completely in flux and out of Atlanta's control. But the only thing they can control is a win. And they have to go to Cincinnati, a team that struggled at home this season and a team that struggled in general this season. And Atlanta only was able to get a draw last time they were there. We'll see if they can get 3 points and put fourth place and a home playoff game in the mix.
I feel like compared to years past, like 2018, when Atlanta United was playing for the Supporters Shield on Decision Day, last year, 2020, when Atlanta United needed a result on Decision Day to get into the postseason, and they did not get it. Compared to maybe 2018, 2020, this should be a lower stress Decision Day for Atlanta United. Yeah. Nothing's going to be easy about playing Cincinnati. I'm not saying that. It's more that you know you're going to be in the postseason. There's only so much you can control yourselves to get the home match. But if you take care of business in Cincinnati, you'll be no lower than fifth. And then you're going to be on the road in the first round, but you'll be playing either New York City or Philadelphia or Nashville. And you've shown that you can compete with all three of those teams this year. That will be a discussion for the next edition of the AT&T Countdown to Kickoff. Let's zero in a little bit more now on how Atlanta United can get what they need in Cincinnati. And that really is a win. A win will put them in position to maybe get that first round home match. Atlanta United, over the last month, has given up a grand total of 0 open play goals. And a lot of it has to do with the shot stopping of Brad Guzan, who comes into the final weekend of the regular season in MLS with a chance, not only at 11 clean sheets, but a chance to lead the league this season in save percentage.
Brad Guzan's been so important this season, not just with his shot stopping, and we'll talk about his whole game here in a second, but lately, it's hard to ignore his shot stopping and some of the huge saves he's made, like the ones we just saw in the DC match. That point-blank save where it's just a quick reaction and it's great positioning. This save against Miami where he comes all the way across. That's a great header from Robbie Robinson. Brad Guzan comes all the way across to make the save. He's so good laterally. And I think it's one of those elements of his game that doesn't get enough credit. He moves side to side so well. And he also does that, what he did against Patrick Klimala of the Red Bulls in that one opportunity they had on a break where he makes the kick save. He stays big for a long time in those situations and makes it really difficult for the opponent to have a clean look. But one of the other elements, Mike, that Brad Guzan has really improved his play on this season and been much more involved than we've typically seen is in possession. And the shot stopping is a huge part of being a goalkeeper. Obviously, it's what we're showing the highlights of. It's what we talk about primarily. But Brad Guzan is number 8 in MLS among goalkeepers in passing percentage. He's number 2 in long passing completion percentage. He's number 1 in passes attempted. So while this is a huge part of his game, and this will get the headlines, these kinds of saves I mean, we could have a highlight reel of Brad Guzan's time in Atlanta that would go 30 minutes of all the big saves he's made over the years. But it's his work. Maybe it's a little bit of a field player at times this year that is really starting to set him apart among goalkeepers in Major League Soccer.
I still think back to the highlights of Brad when he was in high school, playing as an outfield player, kind of standing out as being unusually big and tall among the outfield players. But he was a good technical player in high school. And you're right. I think the philosophy going into the season, Jason, was that the goalkeepers for Atlanta United would have a really big role in build-up. And that is something that has kind of carried over as the season has gone along. And there have been some different thoughts and some different ideas tactically, and obviously a couple different managers. But Brad has had a really, really strong year being involved in the build-up and also organizing a back line that has been absolutely phenomenal this season, giving up just over 1 goal per game.
To be at this stage of Brad Guzan's career and maybe not learn a new skill, but accentuate something that he hasn't been asked to do in all of his stops and be that field player at times. And it's an extra weapon for Gonzalo Pineda. It's an extra weapon in these moments against a team like the New York Red Bulls where you're looking for an extra player to be on the ball and be comfortable to help deal with a press. That was one of the real key components to negating some of the Red Bulls pressing was using Brad Guzan and having a free man. So he's able to do those things, and it hasn't taken away any of the things that make Brad Guzan what he is, one of the best goalkeepers that the United States has ever produced. So to be able to do this, add more weapons to his arsenal at this stage, and be among the best goalkeepers in Major League Soccer this season, it's a credit to Brad. And his leadership, as you mentioned, is another one of those elements that gets left out at times on him, because we see it when he'll come out and he'll speak to the media, and you see that publicly. But you know how much respect that everybody in this club, on the playing squad, on the technical staff, have for him, and how many things that he does that go unnoticed behind the scenes. Brad Guzan is a critical component to all the success Atlanta United's had, and he's a critical component to further success in 2021, because you know how it is in the postseason, Mike. You get to a single game knockout, and generally you're looking for a moment of brilliance in the attack, and you're looking for a moment of brilliance from your goalkeeper to get the result to move on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's why I'm glad that Brad Guzan is on Atlanta United's side. Well, we know if Brad gets a clean sheet Sunday, Atlanta United is certainly in the playoffs. They're pretty much in right now. They would certainly be in with a draw. The easiest way, of course, to defeat your opponent is to not allow them to score any goals. Let's talk about how Atlanta United can defeat Cincinnati. And I want to point out that even though Cincinnati has not won in like 2 months, they are really, really struggling. It's been a tough year up there. They have a caretaker manager right now. He is 0-8-0 since taking over at the end of September. It's been very, very tough for them. But I want to point out that Atlanta United has always found themselves in tricky matches when they're playing Cincinnati.
It's weird, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Now, the outlier is the 4-0 win that Atlanta United had in September at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's also their most recent match, so maybe it shouldn't be an outlier. But, think about it. All the way back to 2019, first time these teams played, Cincinnati as an expansion team, draw. Go to Cincinnati later that year, and Atlanta United needed the goal of the year, literally the goal of the year in MLS, to get a 2-0 win at Nippert Stadium. We all know what happened in 2020 down at the MLS's back tournament. Cincinnati was able to get a 1-0 win basically on a moment. A goal in the second half down in Orlando, a match that was played at 9 a.m. They hit Atlanta United in a moment. Even this year, up at TQL Stadium, where we're going to be on Sunday. Difficult place to play, by the way. Very loud, noisy stadium. Great fans up there. Cincinnati, Luciano Acosta, in a moment, gets a goal against Atlanta United. Atlanta United had to fight pretty hard to get a draw there that night. So my point is this. Cincinnati is struggling, but you can't take anything for granted when you're playing against this team, because they do have players that can be very, very dangerous in those moments.
Yeah, it's always a question at this stage of the season. What's the approach going to be from a team like Cincinnati, who has lost a number of games in a row, has an interim manager who won't be in that role next year at least? You're going to have decisions on players on the roster. Is this a game where Cincinnati, last game at home, wants to give their fans something to kind of remember this group by? Do you go all out for a win here? You know, you're not really even in a position to play much of a spoiler role because, again, of the scenario where it's an 8-goal or more loss that would knock Atlanta out. Does Cincinnati play their first choice team one more time this season? Or any players that they have to make a decision on that maybe if they haven't made it yet, do they give those guys one more opportunity to try to earn a deal for next year? I don't know what the lineup will look like from Cincinnati. It's really hard to judge in these situations. But the idea of what Atlanta needs to do is pretty consistent. When you're playing a team that is lesser than you, whether on form or quality or what have you, you can't let them grow into the game. And that's what it comes down to for Atlanta in this. They can't allow Cincinnati to hang around and build some confidence and build some momentum. Early goals are critical here for Atlanta because then, yeah, you can afford to look around at the scoreboard a little bit. You can afford to ask on the bench, hey, what's going on in that Philadelphia-New York City game? Where do things stand? You need an early goal, though. And we'll get into the predictions here in just a second, but for Atlanta to get what we all expect them to get in this game, I think it really needs a goal in the first half to do that because if Cincinnati gets to hang around, then they've got nothing to play for, but they've also got nothing to lose.
That's 100% right. I'm sure Gonzalo Pineda would also like to have the luxury of being able to look at his watch an hour into the match and then look at the scoreboard and see a multi-goal lead and maybe pick some players that he would like to not expose to any danger in the final 30 minutes of the last match of the regular season and protect them for the playoffs. Now, the good news is Atlanta United will have at least 13 days between the Cincinnati match and their first playoff game. So I don't think you have to worry too much about load management, but you might want to worry a little bit about protection. And if you have the luxury of a second half lead, you might be able to look at a Barco and say, you know what? Let's just make sure, or a Moreno, or an Aruju, or a Joseph. Let's just make sure we get to the finish line of this with you okay, and we don't put you at risk of anything really unexpected going into a playoff game. That would be a very nice position for Gonzalo Pineda to find himself in.
Yeah, and it's going to take a first-half goal, maybe multiple, to be in that scenario where then it's all comfortable. And that's where Atlanta wants to be here. This is a team that Atlanta should beat. And this is a team that, after, I think, a bit of a statement on Wednesday of showing that Atlanta can handle a match where, hey, it's not clicking offensively, and the Red Bulls press gets a lot of credit for that. They showed that they can get a result in a game like that. They need to show now that they can beat a team that they should. And they have done that a lot down the stretch. They've also dropped a few points here and there that are going to be brought up, but a lot of people continue to bring those up, and they should. Atlanta can prove a little more here about where you can expect them to be in the postseason with a good performance here. But we have to make some predictions, Mike. We got one more time to do this.
We do, and, well, it's not one more time.
In the regular season, one more time.
We're going to have a playoff edition, final time for the regular season. We were talking about during our season wrap-up, we might do a compilation of all our incorrect predictions because we've been off on more than a few, me especially.
Well, that's the whole show, Mike.
Very big. I'm going to go very big picture on my prediction. My prediction is that when decision day is over on Sunday, Atlanta United will be locked into a first-round playoff matchup with Philadelphia.
Okay. So that's a lot of predictions in one, actually.
Well, they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yes. Yes.
But, yes, in order to play Philadelphia, I'll just cut right to it.
Yeah.
I don't usually like predicting match outcomes, but I'm going to do it this week. In order to play Philadelphia, that would mean that Atlanta United would have to win against Cincinnati, and New York City would have to get a result at home against Philadelphia on Sunday. And New York City will be playing at Yankee Stadium. I predict that'll happen. I predict Atlanta United will win. So Atlanta United playing Philadelphia in the first round. That's my prediction.
I'm not 100% sure on that one. There's so many variables that I'll stay away from something like that. I'll go back to this match in Cincinnati with something a little more specific. I think it will be an opportunity for Atlanta's attack to really start to hit on all cylinders and have a good bit of momentum coming in. Yes, there's a break, but you'd like to have something to look back at and say, that's how we can play. That's what we can click and what we can do. And I think they will here. I think Ezequiel Barco and Luis Araujo will each create at least 3 chances in this match. I think there's going to be a lot of chances for Atlanta United. Now, they're going to have to convert them, and that's something that, look, we have had some questions about from recent performances, but the chances have been there. I think they will be there here, and I think they will get the conversion they need in the first half. But Barco and Araujo, no matter how much they play, will create at least 3 chances apiece in this match.
All right. This is the last time you're going to see us in the regular season, but don't fear. We're going to be back for the playoffs with special editions of the AT&T Countdown to Kickoff to get you ready for Atlanta United. We'll be in the postseason for the 4th time in 5 years, barring something really, really bizarre on Sunday. And that's quite an achievement for this club to make the playoffs in a 4th year out of 5 tries. Want to thank, though, because this is the end of the regular season, our producers, Kat Gutierrez and Ryan Little. Ryan, who's doing some extra editing on the show today. Ryan, we certainly appreciate it. And, of course, we want to thank AT&T as well for giving us the platform to be able to give you the countdown to kickoff every week. Hopefully you found it to be very informative. Jason and I will be on the radio on Star 94 in Atlanta Sunday at 3 o'clock from Cincinnati as Atlanta United tries to lock down a first-round home match in the MLS Cup playoffs. So we'll talk to you from Cincinnati on Sunday, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for the start of the playoffs here on the AT&T Countdown to Kickoff.